Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, everyone. We are your hosts, Mary and Vince Kramer. Welcome to Waking Up, where we share discussions, insights, and information about science, spirituality, and living a life of your design. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Waking Up with Vince and Mary. I am really thrilled to share this episode with you. In our book, Awakening Through Moments of Choice, there are many concepts shared that are pertinent in living the life you are meant to live and the life of your desires. In this episode, we're going to discuss what we mean by moments of choice, where they come from, how to recognize them, and why it is important to take action on them. Vince, give us your definition of moments of choice.
Well, as we shared in the book, I think we're constantly getting messages or promptings, something to get our attention, to take us in the direction of that life that we're meant to live that we talked about in the last episode. And these messages and promptings really come to us to help us on that journey. We're not alone in this world. First of all, we're community animals. But second of all, there's a physical part of us and a non-physical part of us. And that non-physical part of us is still tapped into the universe and is sending us messages. How do they show up? Well, some people have the hair on the back of their neck stand up. Some people get goosebumps. Some people have a feeling in their heart. There's all kinds of evidence that we're getting this information. No, this person isn't safe. This is a person I want to be around. This person is somebody that I need to get to know more. So these messages and promptings show up in our body, around us all the time to get our attention to start living that reason that we came to Earth. And because of free will, then we have the choice to believe that we're getting these messages or not getting them. And free will is such a powerful thing to help us move forward, but it also can hold us back in so many different ways. So I think one of the things, and I know we're going to talk about this further into the podcast, but one of the things for sure is start looking for evidence that these messages and promptings are truly taking you in the right direction. When it comes to using free will, we also have a choice to take action on these promptings and messages or not take action on them. And I think it's important for us to know that if we don't take action on the promptings are going to get stronger and stronger until sometime down the road, we do take action on them. In an episode that will air very soon, we'll talk about, some of the wake up calls, which are moments of choice that really are meant to get our attention. That's why we call them moments of choice. These messages and promptings happen in our lives, and then we get to choose, do we take action on them or not? And one of I think the things that hold us back the most from that is believing that everything has to make sense in our mind and not being willing to follow the feeling or to follow the promptings that show up in our lives.
I think you explained that really well. I enjoyed listening to that. I wanted to share a really big moment of choice for me. And of course, it's in the book, but it was actually meeting you. I think you had a big knowing. So you're really not talking about knowings exactly, but you were absolutely prompted in many ways to pursue me after you were divorced. And the funny thing is that while I was looking for you, I think I had kind of given up. And so I wasn't really paying attention. So for me, your sincerity and diligence, shall we say, in you following your knowing that we were supposed to be together really caused me to have to pay attention and use what you were talking about, my will, to make that decision, because my mind was doubting, and what if I make a mistake, and what if this is too good to be true? I think that's a really big one for people when they're making decisions, when they know in their gut that they need to do something. And you mentioned using your mind. They're really worried that something is too good to be true. And I think that's what you symbolized for me, is it was too good to be true. And I had to pay attention to the promptings I was receiving. I had to use my will to make an empowered decision.
I know, and many people that have worked with us know just how amazing your intuition is, especially around people and next steps for them or where they might not see themselves. Can you share some examples around that?
Oh, I have a really fun story of a prompting. So way back at the end of 2005, when I was in real estate full time, and before I was in relationship with you, I had decided that I was burned out, worn out, stressed out, and that I wasn't going to expand my real estate business in any way because I was going to die. And I kept getting these phone calls from 3 different people in Colorado Springs that wanted me to meet this aspiring agent because they just knew that we were supposed to work together. And I resisted and resisted. And one in particular of those 3 just insisted that I meet with her. So I gave up, and I did. And she walked in my office door, and I was overwhelmed by the prompting, the intuition, my knowing that I had to hire her. The minute I saw her, it was as if the energy preceded her, and then my physical body caught up and knew that, yes, everyone that wanted us to be connected to work together was right. And I had to, once again, how interesting that both of my examples are very similar in fear of moving into a new relationship. So the one I explained with you, and then the one with Beth, how the feeling was so strong, and I had to overcome the resistance that I was having of making a mistake. Or I guess making a mistake for me is always not being able to get out of something. That's always probably the fear I live with. Those 2 really, really big promptings were just huge in my life. And both of you are still so important in my life. And I can't imagine if I had said no to either of you.
And you've shared a couple really big things in your life and things that affected your life, but I I know that we get messages and promptings in smaller areas of our lives too. Something that we might need to learn, someone that we might need to meet, a situation that we might be willing to do, even though it's not that big a deal. We might just blow it off and not follow the message or the promptings.
Like in the case with the book that fell off the bookshelf for you. That's incredible story.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I know people have experienced that exact same thing. When the book fell off the bookshelf, that was huge for me. And it was something that I really needed to pay attention to. I needed to read that book. But the interesting thing about it was I wouldn't have even thought anything of it when it hit the floor, except when I tried to put it away. That book was nowhere to be found. It wasn't on the shelf. It wasn't on the end cap of where I was in the store. So it was something that, like, well, either you're just going to throw it on the shelf or you're going to take it up to the counter. And on the way up to the counter, it was reading the back of the book that said, oh, I need to pay attention to this. It was a whole new way of looking at things.
And that book absolutely changed your life. I mean, there were many things that changed your life, but that book set you on a course. I think that's such a fascinating story. And I know you're wanting me to tell a smaller story on a prompting. And it's just so hard because, we've just had so many big ones that have changed the course of our lives that I guess they're just so inspiring that I have to talk about those. But of course, every day there are signs. A billboard could be a sign, or going to the mailbox and you've been pondering something or have a question, and there's this really cool postcard in the mailbox and you're like, yes, I am going on vacation, or yes, I am going to sell my house. It can be something as tiny as a piece of mail or as big as what you and I have been talking about, that it can be life-changing.
I'll tell you a place that I've gotten a lot of my promptings, my messages, and had to take a moment to decide, do I want to act on it or not, is in the grocery store. The headlines or the titles of magazine covers. So many times I've something has shown up. We went to Salt Lake just recently to give a talk, and the talk was just written just a couple weeks before we went to Salt Lake. And there on the mirror is a little tag that says, make an impact. And it was like, wow, okay, there is a message for me to go into this meeting, to go into this group of people and share my story, share my heart, share myself, and to truly make an impact. Also, it didn't happen to me, but I know of someone that it did happen to. This individual always left for work at the same time. This was early in my life. For some reason, he had a flat tire. He went outside, had a flat tire, and didn't have a spare. So he got on the phone. He called me and said, hey, I need a ride to work. How soon can you be here to help me out? And it was like, wow, I've got some things to do, but I'll be there shortly. And if he would have left for work, if he wouldn't have had that flat tire, that very day on the route that he took to work every single day, there was a 50-car collision. And who knows what would have happened there. So there's a sign, there's a message to pay attention to. And I'm not saying that every time you have a flat tire, there might be an accident that you're avoiding, but there might be an accident you're avoiding. And that's something for all of us to think about.
And learn to trust.
Yes, trust is huge. And how do we learn to trust? We learn to trust from experiencing it and saying, yes, I am getting messages. Yes, if I don't pay attention to them, I might miss this, or this might happen in my life. So that's huge. And I love the fact that you shared about bulletin boards, because we have a lady who we work with, and she gets her messages from bulletin boards all the time. If she's got a question, all she has to do is go for a drive, and it shows up somewhere on a bulletin board, the answer to her question.
We have so many of these messages and promptings. They come at different levels trying to get our attention, and they are all waking us up. We're going to talk about wake-up calls in another episode, but they're all getting our attention. What are they trying to get attention about? What's your viewpoint on that, Vince?
Well, I think they're trying to get our attention to really live that life that we're meant to live, that we talked about in the last episode. And if you missed it, go back and listen to it, because this will help this answer make a lot of sense to you. But really, it's helping us take action towards living our life in a way that's in alignment with who we are and why we're here. I think that's gotten lost. And because we haven't been taught to look for things that really open us up to more of who we are and why we're here, we have a tendency to just blow those things off and not pay attention to them. And once we learn to pay attention and say, okay, is this a message or not? And once again, back to free will, we get to choose. Is it a message or is it not a message? What I've found is, and I know you found this too, more than not, they're messages. They're coming all the time, like you say. We're truly getting to a place where these promptings say, hey, this is the next step. Hey, this is the direction you need to turn. And are you going to take action on it? So I think it's getting our attention to realize that, hey, we have our own guidance system. We have our true GPS for life. And that guidance system is constantly telling us slow down, speed up, go left, go right. And it's getting our attention through these promptings to, one, notice that we're being given this guidance, but two, to then take action on it. There's a lot of decisions that we have to make in life. Many of the decisions we've seen before in one way or the other. But, the interesting thing, Mary, is if we look back on some of the decisions we made, would we have made that decision? Or is there another way that we haven't thought of? And these messages and promptings get us to look at that in a different way. Because if we keep making the same decisions over and over again, we're going to keep living the same life that we're living. And it might be a great life. You might even be saying life doesn't get any better than this. But what if it does? What if it could? What if you can feel even more and experience even more and have more joy in your life? So these promptings can help us make decisions around supporting ourselves, then get support from others and give support to others as we start paying attention to these moments.
I have a really interesting story about that. Many years before became divorced, I was reading a magazine and came across an article about Debbie Ford. And I ripped it out of the magazine and I was so excited. And I got it to one of my closest friends, Kathy. And I was like, Kathy, you have to do this. You have to become a Debbie Ford coach. Because you were talking about promptings, and sometimes they're for other people, sometimes they're for yourself. But what's interesting about this story is I felt the prompting to give Kathy this information. And she did, by the way, become a Debbie Ford coach, and it had a powerful impact on her life. So now, fast forward to when I am divorcing my first husband, I thought I was going to just crumble into nothingness at one stressful time during the divorce. Just everything was piling up and things were happening with my children, and everyone who's been divorced knows exactly what I'm talking about. And you sometimes come to these breaking points. Isn't it interesting that I knew down to the bottom of my toes that I needed to go to a Debbie Ford workshop? I knew it. And I went, whether I had the money or not, and whether I had the time or not, I, by God, was going to this workshop. So all those years later, I don't remember how many years it was, but all those years later, I ended up making the same decision to be in the work of Debbie Ford that I had suggested for someone else. And it changed my life. And I swear to you, it saved me. Going to that weekend seminar saved me from a nervous breakdown. And I gained clarity and I knew more about myself, which is also what you're talking about, is how can you align with more of who you are? And then get this, so much of Debbie's work is a part of our work together. So look how listening to that one tiny prompting of an article in a magazine where I was, let's say, a little misdirected, but not really. And I was like, I have to give this to Kathy. And then I ended up working with Debbie myself. And now we are so supportive of the work that Debbie Ford did and have integrated it into what we're doing. So it is unknown how impactful it is when you listen. to a prompting, and it can carry on like my story for years and years and years.
Yeah, and that's such a great story, and that has shown up in our work at Imagine Miracles time and time again. We already talked about the Biology of Belief book in Boston falling off the shelf. Other great examples. I was looking for a coaching certification to get certified as a coach, and who was giving a great certification and a great training, and John Maxwell popped up on our Facebook feed. I watched a movie that you asked me to watch, kind of a documentary, right? What the Bleep Do We Know? And the very next day, there was a book from Joe Dispenza with information on how to go to one of his teachings, one of his trainings. So that kind of stuff is shown up time and time again in our lives, in our business. Another amazing one, and not too many people know this story. If you've heard a podcast I've done, you probably have heard this story somewhat. That when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a pilot. I used to lay in the grass and watch the airplanes fly over and watch the contrails, and wanted to be up there. But somebody scared me when I was 7 years old. That's another story in itself. But the interesting thing was, when I graduated from college and I started to work at RCA in Findlay, Ohio, it wasn't too long after I started where they'd made a decision to close the factory down. And I don't know why, but I had this feeling that I should go talk to some people at the ballpark, a night when I was playing softball at one of the local ballparks, about what was going on with their sponsor. Their sponsor just happened to be the Moose Club. And believe it or not, somebody that I was talking to said, I hear you're not working right now. We're looking for a bartender at the club. Why don't you come down and apply? Well, I've never been a bartender before, but it was worth a try. And the interesting thing was, probably one of the most important men in my life was the manager there. And within, I would say it was 9 to 10 months of starting working at the Moose, he talked me into joining the military. And the interesting thing was, in joining the military, I had no desire to fly airplanes after that person scared me. But in joining the military, that desire showed up again. And because my scores were so high in the pilot and navigator test, that it was like, okay, well, at least I got to try that. And then 35 years later, I had thousands of hours in airplanes because I found my way back to my love. So there's an example right there of, hey, you should talk to these people. And then they had this message and prompting to share with me about this job, and look where it ended.
That's a great story. A lot of people would say that, we're sharing stories of synchronicity and serendipity. But really, I think what we're really wanting people to do is to be paying attention. It is synchronicity and serendipity, but it's more than that. It's pay attention. Every morning when you wake up, look for it. Look for those promptings. Use your intuition. Look for the signs from the universe. Really pay attention. It's exciting. And I think when we start our day knowing that we're going to receive promptings and we look for them, we will see them. And it just it's like self-perpetuating. You just get more and more and more.
It's interesting. You shared synchronicity and serendipity. I think we do experience both of those quite a bit in our lives. But if you look at what quantum physics shares with us, and the fact that there are no mistakes or coincidences, synchronicity isn't just being synchronous. It's truly something that has been brought your way. Two promptings have lined up to bring two people together, or your prompting has taken you in a direction that you showed up in the exact place you needed to be in that moment. I think as we really start to understand energy more and more, and quantum physics helps us do that, the words are spectacular, but the fact that there are no mistakes or coincidences really should open you up to understand that everything's happening around you because of you and for you, not to you. It's huge. I want to suggest that we all believe, first of all, that these promptings are happening, that you're not different than anyone else. I've heard that so many times, and I know you've heard it, Mary. Well, that works for them, but that's not me. But really, honestly, they're happening. Those messages are there, the promptings are there. Surround yourself with people that understand that they're having them, and they'll help you see yours. Recognize how the messages show up for you. We all get our messages in our own way. Some people see pictures in their mind. Some people hear voices in their head. Others, others, like I shared, see the billboards along the side of the road. We all have our own ways of these messages showing up, the promptings happening for us. And if we start to learn our way, goes back again, our way, our way, our way. The book shares that over and over again. When we find our way that we're getting messages, now we can start paying attention more. We can start watching for these things that are pointing us in the new direction, or to speed up or slow down, or whatever it's giving us through the universe and guidance delivering these messages. And then really decide before the fact, are you going to start listening to them and take action? And if you are, how are you going to take action? It's kind of like pre-gaming, right? If you're already knowing that the messages and promptings are coming, and you've already told yourself, I'm going to look at this prompting and I'm going to decide, does it work for me or does it not? And if it works for me, I am going to take action. You've already begun to take the step before the prompting ever came. So believe that you're going to get these promptings, recognize how they show up for you, and then decide that you're going to take action on them. And your life will change tremendously in a very short amount of time.
I love that advice. That was awesome. And I want to add one thing, which is take a look at your past and look for where you've had your promptings. So add that to the great advice Vince gave you. It'll help you really notice them in the future. And I wanted to say that I really love this statement that the universe is constantly conspiring to support us. Really love that. Well, as we end our time, it has gone so fast, and it's always so much fun to share these concepts and to always be chatting with you, Vince. I hope all of you listeners are encouraged and you can see how being supported in being all that you can be. And if you want to learn more about Imagine Miracles and other topics about living your unique purpose, go to imaginemiracles.com. And as always, you can get our best-selling book at amazon.com.
You know, Mary, I really love the fact that we're getting together and walking through the chapters and walking through the concepts of awakening through moments of choice. Although it says on the cover, memoir of divine guidance, it's truly a, shall we say, almost a textbook of how to navigate life in a way that supports you and who you are. And our taking the opportunity to share through the podcast, I think is going to make a difference in so many lives. So I'm excited as Mary that you're joining us today. We hope to see you on further podcasts. And until the next time we're together, have a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind-awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.